Hello and welcome to this edition of Peak Life. I'm Elizabeth Vaughn and I am here today with Lieutenant Forrest Winslow. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So we're talking about a very serious topic, basically life-saving skills. We want to talk about how each individual person can be as prepared as possible for medical emergencies that may happen around them. So let's jump right into one of the biggest things that we hear all the time is heart attacks, heart issues. You know, it's one of the leading killers in America. So CPR is something that we're always telling people that they should know. Talk to me a little bit about what CPR is and why it's so important for everyone to be trained.
Okay, so first, before we get started talking about heart attacks, it's very important for us to know there's a difference between a heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest.
Okay.
A lot of people will use the term, even medical professionals will use the terms interchangeably, and they're really not. A heart attack is when someone's having chest pain, shortness of breath. It's more of a plumbing issue with their heart. But the person that's in sudden cardiac arrest or cardiac arrest, they are without a pulse and without breathing. So essentially at that point they are dead. Now, if people were to render aid very quickly, the chances of survival from that event can be very high. But we know currently in the United States, it's less than 10% of people will survive a sudden cardiac arrest.
Wow.
In our city, the stats are a little bit better than that because we have a couple of things that are going for us. People call 911 and our 911 system, our dispatchers have a process called emergency medical dispatch or EMD. So as soon as they determine a person is no longer breathing normally and they're unconscious, they start giving instructions on how to do chest compressions on that person, which is, pardon the pun, but it's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
And a lot of communities don't have that. So our rates of CPR when we get to them are somewhere around 60%.
Wow.
So that's like almost double the national average.
Wow.
So I think that contributes to the increased number of people surviving the event.
So if someone's having a heart attack, they could still be communicating with you. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yeah.
Like they're having chest pains, they're, struggling to breathe
struggling to breathe, having jaw pain, pressure in their chest, arm heaviness. Some women will have different symptoms that are a little more vague. They'll have arm heaviness, some back pain or discomfort, those things, but those people are still able to communicate with you. They may be in a lot of distress and they may have a subsequent cardiac arrest related to them having the heart attack. But one of the things, if a person actually is in cardiac arrest, they're no longer breathing normally and they don't have a pulse.
Wow.
And so even when someone were to call 911 and you would use the term heart attack, and people do every day, our dispatchers, it takes them seconds to minutes to figure out that this person is truly without a pulse.
Sure.
And those minutes and seconds make a difference in them being able to give proper instructions to start chest compressions, which then will result in a decreased survival of the event. Because we know for every minute that a person isn't having chest compressions and or having a defibrillator available to them through an AED, then those chances go down by 10% for every minute that passes. So right now, if I were to collapse in front of you, my chances are about 85% that I could survive as long as you rendered aid through CPR, and then also that someone else would go get a defibrillator. And we know there's a defibrillator in this building, so they would know where it is, they would be able to get it. Some cases, defibrillators are available and people fail to use them, which is really sad. In the sense, about 15% of the time, when there is a defibrillator available, it actually gets used.
So we're talking about a lot here. So somebody collapses in front of you.
Right.
So that's, it's very clear this is not a heart attack, this is cardiac arrest.
Correct.
Call 911.
Absolutely.
Of course. And you kind of have to help them help you. Like they'll get to it eventually, it sounds like. They're very smart, they know what they're doing, but we're trying to shave off seconds here.
Correct. Yeah, so ideally, when you were to call 911, it would be best, most people have cell phones now. Put the cell phone on speakerphone, get the person on their back, get them on the floor on a hard surface, and if they're not breathing and they're not conscious and you can't wake them up, it's time to start chest compressions on them. And so that's what we're trying to drive people to do, because even if they can shave a minute off of that time where they're doing compressions while they're waiting for the dispatcher to go through the verification process of getting the telephone number, the address, and then asking those two crucial questions, 60 seconds equates to 10% more people surviving.
Right. So how do we know the difference between this person needs chest compressions and this person needs a defibrillator?
Okay, so people that are in cardiac arrest, most of the time, if it's a sudden event, they're going to need a defibrillator as well as chest compressions. So the primary thing is you start chest compressions, and then if there's a defibrillator available, and that's another question that dispatcher will ask you, is there one available, and to send someone to go get it.
Okay.
And then if those patients need a defibrillator, then the defibrillator will make the decision to shock or not. So that's kind of another good talking point in the sense that a lot of people think defibrillators are only for trained professionals. Well, the nice thing about them is that most of them will actually prompt you and go through instructions step by step on how to use it. And we had one of our cardiologists take his like 8 or 9-year-old daughter and get her to do it without any instructions for him prior to, and she was able to successfully use the defibrillator because of the step-by-step instructions and the pictures that will be on the pads as well.
So that's really good to know, because even I was thinking, I mean, obviously we all should be trained, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I was thinking, you know, I'm not going to use it. If you drop down, like, sorry, but I feel like I'm not qualified. But you're saying that that's not necessarily the case.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the one message we need to get out there. Is if the defibrillator is there, put it on. If the person doesn't need to be shocked, and there are a lot of people who the defibrillator won't shock them.
Wow, that's amazing.
But in those cases, it's making the decision. It's doing it in the background. They're very smart. You know, they have technology that looks at the pattern of our EKG and says, does it need to be defibrillated or not? And as long as the machine believes it needs to be defibrillated, then it's going to say it's, you know, don't stop touching the patient. It'll start charging, and then you're left to push the button once you determine no one is actually touching the patient, and then you go right back to doing chest compressions again, and you keep doing that, and the machines will cycle every 2 minutes and deliver a shock, and you do that until we arrive.
So let's talk real quick about technology, because there are some really cool apps that once you're trained, you should definitely have, or even if you're not trained. I'm talking about PulsePoint. Tell me a little bit about that.
So a couple of years ago, Chesapeake, along with Richmond, Virginia, we went live. We were the first in Virginia to actually have PulsePoint. PulsePoint is basically an app that runs in the background that looks at who is available to respond. So as soon as that dispatcher, without her having to do anything or him to do anything in the background, it is looking for the point where they're saying it's time to start CPR. Once they determine that this is a CPR scenario, and we call that an echo kind of response, the most severe form of response, they will then automatically in the background, their computers will send an alert to the PulsePoint system. PulsePoint then will look at a quarter-mile radius around that location. So right now, sitting at this studio, anybody that would be around us, if I were to have an event and you were to call 911 that had that app, would then get an alert saying that there was a need for CPR in this location. It would navigate them to that, but it also would show them the closest defibrillators close by to them. And so if we were together, and we'll say maybe someone over at Anytime Fitness was in cardiac arrest, and we got that alert because we're within a quarter mile of that, I could say, Liz, I'm going to go start chest compressions. You go get the defibrillator in the front of this building. And knowing that they probably have one, but just in case, we'll take ours as well. And we'll go over there and we'll start, and then we'll deliver, you know, that care. And we, by statistics, will probably make it to that person 3 to 4 minutes before the 911 responder would be, because we're right here, you know.
So this really helps connect the people who need help with the people who are capable of giving it.
Correct. Yeah. And
not talking about like EMS.
Right. Exactly.
Beyond EMS.
Yeah. So this is just people in the community that are willing and able to help. Even if you're not able to do CPR, let's say you're extremely elderly, just going there to be someone to convey information or to be a help, you know, it'll guide you through. Even if you're not confident with your skills, on the app, it'll show you step by step on how to do the CPR. And when we teach our CPR classes, I always remind people, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, open up this app and just touch that how to, because it will remind you step by step on how you should be doing CPR, and it'll just kind of recall that information.
So let's talk about hands-on training. You guys do offer training for groups of people, anyone who's interested, for free. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so every month at the Great Bridge Central Library, we offer a class the first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. And you can go onto our website, the city's website, fire department, and just search for hands-only CPR. That class, those classes are listed there, and we typically have the next 4 months worth of classes on the site, and you can just click on it, put your email address in, the number of people that will be attending, and you show up. It's free. The important thing is it is training and not certification. And a lot of people they need certification because they're a lifeguard or because they're a nurse. This is not for that purpose. This is just to train citizens who are lay responders to how to do CPR, how to use an AD, and then we talk about a PulsePoint app as well.
Okay.
It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to get the class done, and most people walk away feeling a lot more confident with their skills to be able to save a life or to even be able to act. A lot of people are very fearful of doing CPR in the sense that they might hurt someone, they're fearful of the liability, and also any type of disease transmission. The good thing about Virginia is that we have a Good Samaritan law, and most states will have a Good Samaritan law. And so when you kind of put that into play, even if you harm the person, because a lot of people say, well, I might break their ribs and that kind of stuff, because you were trying to help them, you're actually not going to be found liable because of this Good Samaritan law.
And it sounds like, cardiac arrest is so serious, it's like you might as well do something.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And so like one of our survivors, he ended up having 4 broken ribs.
Wow.
Cracked ribs, right?
Yeah.
But he is alive, now, where if they said, well, I don't want to break Charlie's ribs, so we're not going to start chest compressions, he wouldn't have survived the event. So it's kind of like taking Benadryl. Benadryl makes you sleepy. Doing chest compressions fracture ribs sometimes. And so it's a side effect of the procedure. So the thing is, most people will survive that. It won't be some type of life-ending event because of that cracked rib.
This is such good stuff. We could go on forever about this. I mean, I really hope that people will take this very seriously and go to those trainings. I know I need to go, so I'm making a point, saying it here now, I will go. People need to learn about CPR, those AEDs, the defibrillators, lots to learn, trying to get people to be able to manage a situation before EMS can be there.
Correct.
Every minute counts.
Yeah. And so even if they don't have time to go to the class right now, download the app. It's free. All one word, PulsePoint. You can go to Google Play or your App Store and download it. There'll be 2 different apps there, and we can show you on a phone. One of them is going to be a red icon, a red heart icon.
Okay.
And the other one is a yellow icon.
Okay.
The red one is for the responder. That's the person we want to respond. The yellow one is kind of our sister app. We talked about the AEDs and defibrillators in the community. It's a way for our citizens to actually add defibrillators from their church, from their work, from any place that they have one, to add to that response network.
Perfect.
So that one is kind of like an add-on for you to help us.
You got to know where they are.
Correct.
To use them.
Exactly. And we know where maybe 250 or so are in the city, but there are a ton more out there right now.
Well, Chesapeake is clearly the place to have your heart attack.
Absolutely.
Right? If you're going to have it. Lieutenant, thank you so much. Really great information. We'll push people to the website to learn more.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this important edition of Peak Life. We will see you next time.